It was 2:07 in the morning when my phone started buzzing against the nightstand. At first I thought it was my alarm. Some glitch, maybe. But then I saw the name on the screen. Ethan, work. I stared at it for a second. Ethan was my junior. A good kid. A little green, too eager to please, but loyal. The kind of guy who'd stay late just because you did. The kind you cover for when management starts asking why reports aren't done yet. He shouldn't have been calling me at 2 a.m. When I answered, all I heard was breathing, shaky, uneven, like he'd been crying. "Sir, I'm so sorry," he said. He still called me sir, even after I told him 100 times not to. "Ethan, what happened? You can't come to work tomorrow. Please. They're saying it was you. The files, the audit thing, they're framing you. I didn't know until tonight." There was a crash in the background, like a door shutting hard, then silence. "Ethan, slow down." "Who's saying what?" They said you moved client data off the main server. They said they have proof. HR's been in a meeting for hours. I shouldn't even be calling you." I sat up in bed, my pulse hammering. I could see the blinking red light from my router on the dresser. For some reason, it felt accusatory. "Ethan, what proof?" "Email, screenshots. Stuff you didn't send. I think they—" He stopped, like someone had just walked in. "I can't talk. Just don't come tomorrow, okay? I'm so sorry." The line went dead. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that. My wife had left 2 years ago. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the traffic outside. I remember thinking how strange it was, that even in disaster the world doesn't stop. At 2:30 I opened my laptop. Emails, messages, work chat. Nothing. No sign of anything unusual. Except one thing. A calendar invite for 9 a.m. Urgent. Compliance review. No sender. When I walked into the office the next morning, the air felt heavier than usual. People looked busy in that fake way. Eyes glued to screens. Headphones on, not actually working. I said good morning to Sarah at the front desk. She didn't meet my eyes. When I reached my floor, my access badge turned red. Not the usual beep beep green, just red. That's when I knew Ethan wasn't exaggerating. "Grant," someone said behind me. It was Mason, our HR lead. His tie was crooked, his voice calm in that way people practice in mirrors. "Let's step into the conference room." There were 3 people waiting inside, HR, legal, and my director, Patrick. Patrick wouldn't even look at me. Mason slid a folder across the table. "You've been placed on temporary suspension pending investigation." I opened it. Screenshots. Emails I'd supposedly sent to a private address. Data attached. Confidential data. My name, my signature. "Those aren't mine," I said. Patrick exhaled. "The system logs say otherwise." The irony was I'd built the system. I knew every log, every timestamp, every gap they could forge if they wanted. Mason said something about protocol and integrity of process. Legal nodded along. I didn't argue. I just watched them like I was outside my own life, seeing how neatly they'd choreographed the betrayal. When it was done, Mason handed me a paper to sign, an acknowledgement of ongoing cooperation. I didn't sign. "You can keep the paper," I said. "You'll need it more than I do." Patrick finally looked up, and for a split second I saw guilt flicker. Then it was gone. They asked for my badge. I placed it on the table. When I walked out, the office was quiet enough that I could hear my own footsteps. Ethan wasn't there. His desk was empty. Outside, the sun hit the glass windows of the building, sharp and clean. I stood on the sidewalk, wondering how long they'd been planning it, how long the smiles, the "you're a great mentor," had been part of the setup. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a blank notepad and one thought circling in my head. If they'd gone this far, they weren't done yet. At 11:48 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet," a voice said. Then the line cut. I stared at the dark screen, the reflection of my own face staring back, and for the first time I realized this wasn't about me losing my job. It was about someone making sure I disappeared from that company completely. But that was just the beginning. The next morning I woke up before the alarm. No reason to. I had nowhere to be. But habit is a stubborn thing. The kind of thing that keeps you brushing your teeth even after someone's buried your name under a pile of forged emails. Coffee tasted like ash that day. The silence in my apartment felt heavier than usual. I kept replaying Ethan's voice in my head, the way he said, "They're framing you." It didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded terrified. By 8 a.m. my phone was lighting up with messages. 2 from HR, 1 from an unknown number that just said, "Don't make it worse." Then an email, no greeting, no signature. Just, "You'll want to check the company Slack." I opened it. My account was locked, but the public channels were still visible. Dozens of messages. People whispering in digital tones. The corporate version of a rumor mill. I heard Grant leak the pricing sheets. Apparently he'd been siphoning client data for months. Guess the quiet ones are always hiding something. And then the one that stopped me cold. "It's crazy," Ethan warned management weeks ago. That line. It was surgical. Planted. Just enough to rewrite the story. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. He was scared. Maybe for himself now. Around noon, a delivery guy buzzed my apartment. A plain brown envelope. No return address. Inside, printed screenshots of those same emails, but annotated this time. Red circles, arrows, a sticky note that read, "Looks familiar?" It wasn't signed, but I knew who'd sent it. Patrick. He'd been gunning for the director's seat since last year. I was the only one between him and it. The dots connected themselves. Still, I wasn't about to fight fire with fury. You don't win against people like Patrick by shouting. You win by letting them talk too much. I opened my laptop and logged into an old admin console I still had bookmarked, buried deep in the system, a backup node I'd built for testing years ago. It wasn't tied to the new network. They'd forgotten it existed. Good. If they'd faked logs, there'd be metadata trails. You can forge signatures, but you can't fake entropy timestamps. Not unless you know exactly where to look. And I knew. I started copying what I could. Version histories, patch notes, server hashes. It was tedious, technical work, the kind that leaves you alone with your thoughts. Between commands, I kept seeing Patrick's face, that calm, polished smile he always used when he told someone, "It's not personal." It never is, until it ruins your life. By the next day, my suspension email turned into something worse. Termination pending legal review. Legal review meant they were calling the police next. That's when I knew. This wasn't just corporate politics. Someone wanted me gone. I drove to the office anyway. I wasn't there to plead. I was there to look people in the eye. Security met me at the door, polite but firm. Behind them, through the glass, I saw Patrick standing near reception, coffee in hand. He looked relaxed, like a man who'd already erased me from the org chart. "Grant," he said, stepping forward, voice low, "you shouldn't be here." "Neither should the person who stole company data," I said. His smile didn't falter. Big words for someone whose login is disabled. "Funny," I said. "I built that login." He took a sip of his coffee. "You need to let this go. HR's got it handled." "Handled," I repeated. "That's one word for it." He started to walk away. I said quietly, "How's the bonus pool this year, Patrick?" He froze. Just a flicker. Enough. I turned and left before he could answer. That night, my phone lit up again. Unknown number. Text only. "You're making people nervous," I typed back. "Good." No reply. I spent the rest of the night pulling logs, tracking creation trails, finding inconsistencies. There was one, a small one, buried in a metadata string, a mismatch in time zone stamps. Someone had generated those emails from a different region entirely, the Singapore VPN cluster. No one in our office used it, except Patrick, and Ethan, who'd worked under him before joining my team. That's when it clicked. Ethan hadn't betrayed me. He'd been used. The next morning I drafted a message. Just one line sent to Patrick's inbox from an anonymous burner. Nice try with the timestamp. Within minutes, the Slack chatter flared again. People suddenly talking about new developments. I sat back, watching it unfold like static. Patrick would panic, and panic makes people sloppy. He'd reach out to someone, trying to plug the hole, and when he did, I'd be waiting. At 3 p.m., Ethan finally called. His voice was wrecked. Sir, I think they know I told you. Then you need to listen carefully, I said. Do not delete anything, not one message. Forward it to your personal email, then unplug your laptop and take it home. They said they'll fire me if I... They will anyway, I interrupted. Might as well make it worth something. There was silence, then a faint, broken whisper. Why are you helping me? They ruined you. Because they're not done yet, I said, and neither am I. That night, while the company celebrated their clean sweep in some internal memo I wasn't supposed to see, I was building my own archive. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about precision. Because if Patrick wanted to play God with careers and reputations, I was going to make sure he learned what happens when you forge reality in a world where data never truly dies. And I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. 3 days. That's how long it took for the office to start rotting from the inside. Rumors, whispers, nervous glances. HR held confidential meetings. People avoided eye contact in the elevators. When a company decides to sacrifice someone, they do it clean, quiet, surgical. But when the knife slips, when the blood stains the hand that holds it, the silence breaks. I wasn't supposed to know any of this, but Ethan was still talking. He'd copied every internal chat between Patrick and HR before they locked him out. Every thread where they rehearsed how to phrase things, how to minimize exposure, how to align the narrative. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was a cover-up. At 1 a.m. that night, Ethan sent me a zip folder. No message, just a subject line. You'll want to see this. Inside were screenshots, time-stamped, archived, unforgeable. Patrick telling HR to bury the trail. A compliance manager replying, already deleted, backup gone. And then Patrick again. Good. He'll fold quietly. He's too clean to fight dirty. He was half right. The next morning, I called an old friend, someone from IT security who'd left the company last year after Patrick's budget restructure. His name was Neil, and he owed me one. Still have access to the internal mirror? I asked him. He laughed softly. You mean the one I told them I decommissioned? Yeah, I said. That one. Jesus, Grant, what did you step in? Something expensive, I replied. Can you get me 6 months of network logs? Specifically outbound traffic on Patrick's credentials. There was a pause. Then, you didn't hear this from me. Check your inbox in an hour. He hung up. By noon, I had a compressed file sitting in a private drive. The log entries were dense, but the pattern was obvious. Patrick had been moving data for months. Not to a competitor, but to a third-party vendor linked to his wife's startup. He'd sold the access, and when the compliance team flagged it, he'd used my credentials to take the fall. He didn't just frame me. He'd used me as the decoy while cashing out. I remember sitting back, staring at the screen and feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not anger, not relief. Clarity. I called Ethan again. Listen, I said, you're going to get an email in a few minutes. It's encrypted. Don't open it yet. Just forward it to your personal inbox and delete it from your sent folder. What is it? He asked. Insurance, I said. And if they find out? They will, I said. That's the point. At 5 p.m., I walked into the office. Again. No badge, no clearance. Just a visitor sticker and a folder under my arm. The receptionist hesitated. Grant, I don't think... I'm here for Patrick, I said. He'll want to see me. She called him. He came down 5 minutes later, fake smile already loaded. Grant, he said, voice pitched low. We've talked about this. You can't just... I know, I said, stepping closer. But I thought you'd want to see the reports before compliance does. He blinked. What reports? The ones with your VPN timestamps, I said, dropping the folder on the counter. The ones showing you logged into the Singapore server 2 hours before those emails appeared. His face drained. He tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. That's absurd. Yeah, I said. So was framing me. He opened the folder, eyes scanning the papers. I watched him realize that every page was real. His lips parted. What do you want? He whispered. I want you to stop pretending you're untouchable, I said, and I want you to understand what happens when people like you underestimate quiet men. He leaned closer, hissed, You think this scares me? You've got nothing. I smiled, slow and calm. You might want to check your inbox. He froze again, just for a second, then bolted toward the elevator. By the time he got upstairs, Ethan's email had already hit the internal network, the same one Patrick had been monitoring for months. It was automatic, mirrored to the board's shared drive. Every message, every deleted log, every transaction laid bare. I walked out as the storm broke. Phones ringing, voices raised, the sound of panic behind glass walls. Outside, the air smelled like rain. I sat in my car, engine off, and waited. At 7:30, my phone buzzed. Ethan, they're losing it. Patrick's locked in a meeting with legal. HR's in crisis mode. They know it's him. Good, I said. Now unplug everything and leave. What about you? I'm already gone. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, the same spot where this all started. I poured a drink, opened my laptop, and watched the company intranet through a private mirror Neil had set up for me. One by one, names started disappearing from the staff directory. Patrick, the compliance lead, 2 HR managers. Like bad code being deleted line by line. I should have felt vindicated. I didn't. I just felt quiet. Because revenge isn't a fire. It's gravity. It pulls everything back into balance. Slow and inevitable. Before midnight, Ethan texted again. They suspended Patrick. Legal's reviewing everything. I think it's over. It's not, I replied. Not yet. What do you mean? Wait for the morning announcement. And sure enough, at 8 a.m. the next day, the company sent out a public memo. Due to ongoing compliance violations, several leadership roles have been terminated. Further restructuring to follow. Ethan sent one more message. They thought you were gone. I typed back, I wasn't. That night, I opened my laptop one last time. In my private drive sat every piece of evidence, every log, every thread. I compressed it into a single file, labeled it Backup 01 zip, and moved it to a fresh drive. Then I formatted the old one, wiped the slate clean, and leaned back in my chair. The phone buzzed once, a single message from an unknown number. You win? I didn't reply. That night, I stopped being the hero. 3 weeks after the storm, my name quietly disappeared from the company's termination notice. No apology, no correction, just absence. That's how corporations admit guilt, by pretending the person they buried never existed. The world didn't celebrate. There was no grand vindication, no email saying you were right. But sometimes silence is its own confession. I didn't go back. I never planned to. There's a moment when you realize a place has already burned down, even if the building's still standing. Ethan texted me once more, short and nervous. They want me to stay, offered me your old position. I stared at the message, then typed back. Take it, learn from it, but don't become them. He replied with a single line that made me smile. Too late for that. I've seen too much. The following week, I cleaned out my apartment, not because I was moving, but because I needed to feel like I wasn't living in someone else's ashes. Papers, old reports, folders, every trace of that company gone into a box. I didn't throw it away, though. I labeled it Exhibit A and set it on a shelf in the closet. A quiet reminder of how close good men come to disappearing when they entrust the wrong hands. Work came slowly at first. small consulting jobs, freelance IT work, the kind of projects no one cares about, until they suddenly do. But word gets around. A month later, Neil called. You ever thought about starting your own firm? With what? I asked. A laptop and a grudge? He laughed. That's how half the cybersecurity companies start. He wasn't wrong. We built it small, just the two of us. Some borrowed equipment, a rented space above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon and burnt sugar. We called it Second Layer. The joke was obvious. Everything important lives under the surface. First clients were referrals. Local law firms, small agencies, startups who couldn't afford to get blindsided. We audited, patched, secured, and for the first time in years, I woke up without the weight of politics on my chest. No meetings about narrative, no whispered sabotage disguised as collaboration, just code, clients, and clarity. 6 months later, I got an email from Ethan. They're selling the company. Patrick tried to settle privately. Legal's after him for breach and fraud. HR's gone. Thought you'd want to know. I read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of spite, just peace. Because the thing about revenge is that it's only satisfying when it ends. And mine had already ended the night I walked away. Still, I kept one copy of everything. The logs, the reports, the messages, locked in a drive at the bottom of a drawer. Not for leverage, for memory. Proof that what happened was real. Sometimes people call that paranoia. I call it insurance. One evening I stayed late at the office. The sun had gone. The street outside was empty except for the glow of the bakery sign. I brewed a coffee, sat by the window, and opened an old text file on my screen, the first note I'd written to myself the night Ethan called. Don't come to work tomorrow. It looked small now, almost harmless. A warning I hadn't understood at the time. A line that had ended one version of my life and started another. I stared at it for a long while before typing beneath it. Thank you. A week later, Neil and I signed our first major client, a government contract. Nothing huge, but enough to prove we'd survived. After the meeting, I stood outside the building and watched people rush past in their suits and ID badges, walking the same rhythm I used to. It hit me then. I hadn't been framed because I was weak. I'd been framed because I didn't play their game. And maybe that was the point all along, to remind me that silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. That night, back at my apartment, I poured a drink and opened the drawer where the backup drive sat. Still there. Still labeled backup node zip. I plugged it in. The screen flickered as the folder opened. Timestamps, documents, every log that had almost erased me. I hovered over the delete key. Then I smiled, closed the lid, unplugged the drive. Because some things aren't meant to be deleted. They're meant to remind you of what you survived. A few days later, Ethan called again. His voice was steady this time. You were right, he said. They're all gone. Patrick, HR, the director, fired. The company's under audit. It's chaos. And you? Still standing, he said. Thanks to you. I let the silence hang for a second before replying. No, Ethan. Thanks to the truth. I just made sure it didn't die quietly. He laughed. That tired, relieved kind of laugh that sounds like freedom. You really backed everything up, didn't you? I looked at the closed laptop on my desk, the reflection of city lights dancing across it. Yeah, I said. Everything. Later, lying in bed, I thought about the night it all started. The trembling voice, the panic, the warning. It felt like someone else's story now, but I still remember that feeling of being erased, of realizing how fragile a name can be when the wrong hands hold it. That's why I don't hate them anymore. They did what people like that always do. They underestimated the quiet man, and when they erased me, they didn't know I'd been backing up everything.